Well, hello, it's me again. I hope everybody can hear me. Just somebody say yes in the chat. Boom, we're okay. Great, thank you for participating in the last seminar. Up next, we've got reputation management in the time of COVID and beyond. So once again, if you just maybe hopped into this one or missed or hopped in halfway through the last seminar, please feel free to put your questions in the chat bubble. And I'm going to copy and paste them into a document so that we can ask our presenter at the end. So anything you need to know, just throw it in the chat bubble. Next up, we've got Lesley Chang of Beattie Tartan, the agency of record for the BC Ale Trail. Lesley is going to use her experience in issues management, crisis communications, media relations, reputation management, and storytelling to lead us through the next session. Be prepared to take notes and ask questions, as she'll have 5 things that you can do today. Help me welcome Lesley Chang.
Hello, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for that great introduction. I mean, my reputation precedes me, apparently. But yeah, it's really great to be here. I am really excited to get started. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen. 1 second here. So reputation management and storytelling. This is really timely today as we enter into another month of lockdowns and we're trying to build up our reputation here. So before I get into that, though, I'd like to kind of talk to you about who we are. So who Beattie Tartan is. We are an extension of a top UK agency, Beattie Group, and Beattie Tartan is one of Canada's most sought after integrated communications agencies. We have quite a few clients across Canada, and we also have offices across Canada as well in Vancouver Island, Vancouver, in Calgary, Toronto, and even across the pond. And as Jordan said, we are the agency of record for BC Ale Trail. So I know there are a few member breweries who are here today, and it's really great to be here. A little bit about myself. I'm a public relations professional with a passion for uncovering the story behind the story, and that has brought me a lot of happiness. I've met a lot of really great people through my job, and a lot of my work has been in the tourism and hospitality industry, but I have also done a lot of communications, public relations, media relations, issues management, internal, external communications, and all these different things for a lot of other different different sectors as well. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. So what are we here to discuss today? Well, first, we're going to talk about what reputation management actually is, discuss a little bit about what storytelling is, and then I'm going to leave you with 5 things you can do today. So I think those are really great key takeaways for you to get started. Please hit me up with some questions later on because I love them. So first, what is reputation management? Reputation management is essentially just what people really expect to, sorry, hold on 1 second. It's a way for you to manage your reputation online because people don't really know what to expect. So it's essentially how people see you and what their first thoughts are of you and your brand online. Just give me 1 moment here. So a lot of people think that reputation management is really the process of controlling and improving how your brand is perceived by others. And everyone thinks that it's increasingly difficult for companies to protect their own image online. And sometimes it feels like the trolls are out to get you, but really there's really not much you can do, but trust me, there is. So here's a few things that I would like to bring to your attention about reputation management. These are 5 things that I think are really interesting. One thing is that people think that reputation management happens mostly online. This isn't exactly true. It is every touch point that you have with your customer, whether it's them picking up that beer can or it's somebody talking to somebody at your front line staff, it's every touch point they have. It's somebody liking a photo on Instagram. It's somebody commenting on a Facebook post or somebody responding to a tweet. That is part of your reputation management. And a good reputation, well, or even a bad one, will affect sales and marketing. It's essential for business survival. And that last point on this slide here, about 87% of customers reverse a purchase decision if there are reputation issues. That is 100% true. So it is one of those things that's really important for both personalities as well as brands, because the people behind your brand really bring your brand to life. So a good thing to remember here is that the thing you don't want people to remember you for, or the first time of people hearing of you, is that it's because you did something wrong. It's worth investing in storytelling and communicating what your brand and positive news stories are to build that brand trust. And so we're going to get into that a little bit in the next slide about brand trust. And this is how you do it. As you can see here, it's a circle. So the brand trust here is really important, and it comes in very many different forms, but they're all interconnected. This graph shows that it all relates back to brand trust, whether it's values-based trust because people trust the brand to live up to their perceptions of the brand's social responsibility, or if it's somebody that knows how this brand interacts with its customers, or somebody or a brand that that really lives what and says and does what they say they'll do. It's people trusting brands to deliver on their brand promise, whether it's about quality, corporate social responsibility, sustainability, or if you are just invested into your community. When Gustafson's Business School looked into why some brands did better than others in their annual survey, they found that most brands did a good job on delivering on function and relationship trust. Where they fell down was not doing a good job of asking or taking their why and really understanding what that value meant and what that stood for. It's telling that the most trusted brands in Canada for the past few years has been MEC and CAA. It'll be interesting to see how MEC does this year with the news of their purchase in 2020. And the second part of this is in storytelling. So what is it? It's an incredibly valuable tool that you can add to your marketing toolkit. It can solidify abstract concept and simplify complex messages. It can bring people together. It can inspire and motivate. And you're all naturals at it. Remember your why. So many businesses are good at telling people what they do, what they sell, how they do it, but they forget to tell them why they do it. So what makes you passionate about this? What makes you put in all the long hours that you do into your business? This is the reason. This is the story that you need to tell. And what makes a good story? So if you think about a party, you think about the person that's kind of the life of the party. They're usually pretty mysterious. They're telling a really good story. They've got people around them listening raptly. What makes a good story? One, it's entertaining. It's a good story that keeps you engaged. They want to know what's next. Two, it's educational. Surprisingly educational, because you will learn something out of this really good story, and it will spark curiosity. It'll make them want to learn more. Three, it's relatable. It's something that the reader or your audience is really interested in, and it's something that that it's relatable to them, whether it's either emotions or experiences that people undergo. Four, it's organized. It actually has a beginning, middle, and end. And it follows that succinct organization that helps convey a core message and helps people absorb it. And five, it's memorable. Whether it's through inspiration or scandal or humor, good stories stick in readers' minds. And one thing that's not on here is actually very important. It is the call to action. What do you want your listener to do? What do you want this person who's absorbing your really compelling story? What is that one action you want them to take? And that is something that we can all kind of work on as marketers, as business entrepreneurs, as brewers. We can all do that and really hone in on that. Whether that action is to spread the word, to come back more often, or to provide feedback, it's an open-ended thing, but you really got to figure out what that call to action is. So, talking about storylines and storytelling, these are some of the headlines that have dominated in the past year and a bit about the different breweries that came in the news in the past for BC Ale Trail. So some of them, as you can see here, follow certain storylines about sustainable craft beer, places to explore Penticton's breweries, places to go in Quesnel, that explore BC IPA that was launched by BC Ale Trail and Destination BC. We're looking for stories that have impact, how craft beer is supporting local economies, driving innovation, and for example, the strategic byproducts in the way of how equipment is being manufactured locally, uh, or locally sourced ingredients like hops. Anything that's food and craft beer related also tends to get picked up by media. So if you're starting to build out stories to tell for media, these are things that are really great to know. These are things that media are looking for. I mean, there are lots of other things happening as well. And like this morning, there was the keynote about diversity in brewing. That is a very timely topic that we can discuss for now. And of course, when we can gather again, events are also a great way to promote the local craft beer scene. So I'm going to just jump right into the 5 things you can do today. So the first thing you should all be doing, if you're not already, is to monitor your brand online. Before you can do anything, you need to listen. It's the most important step. Do you know where your brand shows up first? What shows up on the first page of Google when you search for your brand? Is it your website? Is it a review site? Do me a favor and just quickly Google your brand to see what comes up first. Let me know what pops up. There are a lot of free tools that you can use to monitor your brand online, things like Google Alerts, social mention, etc. There's a lot of them that are available. You essentially want to look for what people are saying about you. Are they talking about you on TripAdvisor? What are they saying about you on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram? And you want to take stock of all of that. And then the second part to it is to devise a response plan as well. If you see a negative review, take the time to consider each carefully before responding, because we've all seen those stories where somebody didn't do a great job of handling a bad story, and then suddenly it turned into a bigger one. That's not what we're here for. We're here instead to create positive content. So just as people flock to social channels to learn about your brand and what types of merch you carry or what kind of brews you have, you want to be sure that you're active on those channels with good, positive content. It's also important to remember that the content you post is on brand for your brand and not for anyone else. Don't post something just to be trendy. Create content that's on brand and delivers on your brand promise, because that's how you build trust. This also goes hand in hand, as I said, in building trust with your customers and your audience, and it also helps you bring in new people as well. So on that note of being transparent and gaining trust, that is one thing you can do today as well. And when I say this, it's also about your brand promise. It's about when dealing with negative comments, reviews from unhappy customers, because I know we all have that. It's often worth remembering what your customer service training is telling you to do. Approach negative Nellies like you would with a difficult customer. Actively listen to their concerns and try to resolve it in a positive way. I don't think I need to tell you that, because you all have really great experience doing this. Stick to your brand promise and be transparent with your actions. After all, building trust boils down to just one thing. If you say you're going to do it, and then tell people you did. The fourth thing you can do is treat your Google My Business listing as your business card. And I think in the Destination BC seminar just before this, they might have touched on this, but if they haven't, this is usually the first thing that pops up when you Google a business. It's the Google My Business listing. It's located just on the left side of the screen. And this is a super important and free tool that you can use to build your online reputation. Yeah, if you haven't claimed your listing, do so now through Google Maps. Simply search for your business, click the business name, choose the correct one, and claim it by clicking on Claim This Business. If you can manage each section of that, then you can control everything from hours of operation to whether you offer takeout delivery or curbside pickup. And this is the first step that will help you keep your business up to date and, more importantly, easy for your customers to find. Even if you haven't claimed your Google My Business listing, you might notice that some people have already been posting reviews, good or bad, that's questionable. This is your chance to claim that listing and respond to them. You'll get a sense of how they feel about your brand and the brand's reputation as well. And then the fifth thing you can do is to ask for reviews. You can just simply ask your customers to ask for reviews, or ask them to post something on social media. You can ask them to review us on platforms on like TripAdvisor, Google Maps, Facebook, Yelp, Zomato, or basically anywhere reviews are accepted. They go a long way in building your reputation online and in person, and it gives you a chance to build a new customer following as well. So tying it all together, it's great because this all kind of ties together. Through storytelling, you're able to manage your reputation and relationship with your customers. You can define your core message, your brand's promise, and begin telling your brand's story, or even your own story, because that's always interesting as well. Create content based on the core message with one call to action. Have one of our beers and tell other people that you did. Rinse and repeat. Use this method to build trust with your new and current customers. That's basically it. And I know I'm really early here, but I would love to open it up for questions.
I guess that's my cue. Okay, let me have a look here. Okay, right now there's one. Can a call to action cheapen a story? Should you always include a call to action?
That's a really great question. And my answer to that is usually yes, because you can still tell your story, but have that call to action buried in there as one of your key messages. So be very thoughtful and mindful of how you tell that story. Because if that one thing that you want people to take away from your story is to buy beer or to be hooked into it somehow, you can work it into your key messages. And so that becomes your call to action.
Okay, one, Lesley, can you give an example of a recent story you told that got picked up by media?
So a recent story that I told, there's been a lot, but I think the one that really is of interest to me, the biggest one that sticks in my mind is when I was previously at my old job at Tourism Richmond. I was able to talk to a journalist and get them to feature the destination in the New York Times. So that was an entire destination story where I talked about everything. And that was everything from the airport to the hotels to the restaurants to the people who were in there to the little neighborhoods that were everywhere. And that is just one example of a great story that's all wrapped up in a destination story.
Awesome. Okay, Chloe wrote, we had a number of anti-mask interactions this fall. One on our Google review. We responded by killing with kindness, as we always do, but I feel like that cheapened my brand. What do you advise?
I'm curious why you think that cheapened your brand, because usually if somebody who's an anti-masker, I mean, the way you deal with that is just with any other type of customer interaction. And you can always fall back on, this is provincial health orders. If you don't like it, I'm sorry, and it is your business, and there are certain things that you need to really keep in mind when dealing with anti-maskers. You also have your staff to think about it. Well, they are the other part of the brand, and they are the other part of your story as well. You want to make sure that they're protected. So for anti-maskers, I don't think it's a cheapening of brand at all. I think it's really putting community, putting people first, and it's putting your customers first as well.
Great, thank you, Lesley. Okay, one more here. Do you have any recommendations for reputation management when it comes to social media? What is the best way to respond to negative comments?
Well, The first thing we tell anybody on social media is to not feed the trolls. And I think I see you smiling there, Jordan. I think you've got a couple of experiences there as well. But I
Every
think a lot of, sorry,
I was just going to say everybody loves steel and oak, so we don't deal with this that much. I'm
that's
joking.
very lucky.
Yeah, I'm
But
joking.
but yes, the first rule is to not feed the trolls. And I mean, it that I do feel like is it does come with experience knowing who a troll is and who is actually an unhappy customer. So sometimes it does take time to dig in and see, was there really something that requires more attention? Was there something that we could have done better? And reaching out to them and seeing what the issue actually is.
From a practical point of view, is it best to, so if it's not a troll, if it's somebody that has a genuine issue, is it better to deal with that uh, in the comments section on social, or is it better to take it offline? Like, is it better to show the other people that might come across that post that you've dealt with it and handled it properly? Or is it still best practice to take it offline somewhere else via email or direct message?
I think it's important to do a little bit of both. So, a lot of larger companies have done this and it's worked really well. And it's essentially just saying, we hear you have concerns, please DM us or we'll reach out to you to talk about this further and then about it in private because you don't really want them to air any dirty laundry and you don't really want to make them look bad either. So, it's more about that one-to-one connection. And again, it goes back to customer service, right? So, if you are able to reach an amenable like a good conclusion to that, then you can start telling people this is how we dealt with it. If it becomes a story that you can tell, that's great, right? So it becomes building that trust all over again from this first step.
Great. How are craft brewers going to resonate with those who primarily drink macro beer to bring them on the side of craft and try craft beer?
That's a tough question for me. I think that for craft breweries in BC, you're very lucky. There's so many choices. There's always going to be a beer for someone. And for the ones who will prefer like their larger brand name beers, it's just about enticing them with brand promise, with telling them, we take care of our community, we take care of our hops, this is how we do it, and these are the types of things you can expect from our brand. And just hammering that over and over again. Maybe give them a free taste. If there's like an event that you can be at, you can have a booth, you can have little sips of beer, things like that. Entice them with flights of beer as well, or pairing up with another restaurant and saying, will you carry our beers and offer it like a flight of beer that way, which I'm
Um,
sure you're all doing.
the this one is kind of related to the how to deal with the social media negativity, but it's more directed towards reviews. I guess Google reviews. What is the best way to handle a bad review online to keep your reputation?
Again, I think it still goes down to investigating if you can see how they got to that point, right? So for those with tap rooms, did it happen in the tap room? Was it something that your staff was responsible for, or was this customer truly a nightmare? Then you can take it from there, and you can really investigate and see how you want to respond to it. Of course, those who work in customer service will know the customer is never right or never wrong, but at the same time it's like, well, you got to think about your own business, you have to think about people who work there. So it's taking that kind of stance of almost an outsider stance to kind of dig in and see what actually happened. And then on the second side of it, to respond to it, because Google is a little bit different, where you can't really respond to somebody privately, um, I would just say, sometimes they check back to see if there is a response. You can always post and say, we're sorry to hear you had this bad experience. We'd love to talk to you more about it. Please reach out to us. And you can try to make it right that way, or you can find out what actually happened.
I find, just as an anecdote, that when it's often you get your back up against the wall because it feels like they're insulting your own business and your hard work. And it took me forever to figure it out, just to realize that most of the time it's because they had an expectation that wasn't met, and whether the expectation was fair or not is irrelevant. They had an expectation and you didn't meet it. So I know my first response is always tell them to F off, that they're wrong. But yeah, it always comes down, it seems, to expectation not being met in one way or another. I've got one here from the NPR Tiny Desk set. What is Lesley's view on working with influencers? Is there a risk to brand integrity? And then there's another part I saw down here, I believe from, and further to that question, we get a ton of requests from influencers who are asking for beer samples. How do you recommend dealing with this? So I guess, well, 2 points. So dealing with influencers, is there a risk to brand integrity? And I guess that probably goes in our industry. I think most people in our industry know who are brand influencers, because they've probably reached out to your own brewery to ask for free beer or whatever. So are influencers the right way to go? Is there risk to brand integrity?
That's a multi-part question, and it really boils down to, well, what is your marketing strategy, right? It boils down to who your audience is, who you're trying to reach, what the message is you're trying to share, and is this influencer a fit for that? So if you're trying to reach somebody who has a little bit of an older demographic, and you want somebody who's got a bit more of a sophisticated palate, take a look at the followers they have, take a look at the content that they're posting, and make a judgment call from there. And I mean, if you are on the BCL trail, feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you vet those influencers to see if they are somebody that you should be working with. There's a lot of different ways to look at influencers as well. I mean, one of the key things I look at when I look at working with influencers is to see what their engagement rate's like, if there's authenticity in their content, and then seeing if it actually is a fit for the brand that I'm representing. So when we work with influencers, it's not always just like, oh, you've got 70,000 followers, that's great. But is it really, when you take a deeper dive and you look at the 70,000 followers and see that 20,000 of them are fake accounts? So you really have to do your research with these influencers. Now, for the influencers who are asking for free things, this is a thing that plagues the tourism and hospitality industry quite a bit. It's, again, looking at whether or not they are worthwhile to work with, one, and two, if you can get something else out of them. So if you are looking for like more photography, if you are looking for a content play, you can make that ask. You can say, okay, well, we can send you this, but can you provide X? And make sure that it really fits with your marketing plan.
Awesome. Okay, how can we deal with beer rating sites, Untapped, Rate Beer, where it doesn't critique the beer, but is more a catalog of personal preferences? Oftentimes, you won't get a good review unless the person is a fan of that style. I have a good, somebody had written a review about our Simple Things Pilsner, and they said, it could be the best Pilsner outside of Pilsen, 3 stars out of 5. And so I feel that, because it is definitely heavily weighted to certain styles of beer. So what would you recommend to that?
Oh boy, that is that's such a very personal thing. It's like, if I was a restaurant owner and I was reading through all the Yelp reviews, I would take them all so personally. But I think for anybody in that kind of industry, you really have to take a step back and see, okay, well, this is one person. They have their own preferences, and just go with that, because otherwise you're going to give yourself way too much anxiety, just you know reading through all those reviews and then going, oh my god, oh my god. But that's not always the true, that's not always a true look at what your reputation can be. If you know that you're living up to your brand promise, if you know that you're creating craft beer that your customers love, and you know that there are other lookalike audiences almost that could potentially like it as well, go after them, because that's what I would suggest.
I think we're all, because we're also beer fans, we're all so hyper focused on social media and what's actually happening within industry. And I remember our team would always be obsessive in the early days about Untapped, and then we do the math on the amount of untapped reviews versus the amount of customers that came through the door to realize that the percentage of people that rate you on Untapped versus who actually drinks your beer is so minuscule that we just stopped worrying about it, because it actually doesn't really make that big of a dent at all in the overall opinion of a brewery's beer. It's just a very small market that we all pay attention to. Somebody wrote Untapped is dead to me. That's good. Okay, we still have some time. Are there any more questions from the audience here? When a food beverage critic reaches out to do a review, what can I do to ensure that I get a good, positive story?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that when somebody does reach out to you for that kind of thing, just be honest with them. And I think journalists, especially food and beverage writers, they really appreciate that honesty. I know some food critics will be a lot more approaching it from a lot more of a personal perspective as opposed to like what the food actually is. There are writers who will do that and really look at what the whole overall experiences. So knowing who you're talking to is first thing. Second thing is to make sure that you present your brand and your and everything that you're doing in a really good light, right? In the best possible light. If you think about it as providing customer service, what do you want them to walk away with? Do you want them to walk away with a smile on their face? If they do, then you're pretty much going to be guaranteed that they're going to write a decently happy story.
Awesome. And then from the same person, and on the flip side, how do I recover from a bad review in a big publication?
Oh, that would be a little bit harder for sure. But I think the first step is to contact your PR person and find out what happened, and then the second part of it is to work with that writer and see if you can make it right for them somehow. But you know, sometimes it does happen. Sometimes you will have a bad review. Sometimes it's just an off day. And I do feel like the travel food writers that I've worked with in the past are very understanding. And most of the time, they're not out to get you, as it were, but rather to give people a really fair and clear uh, perspective of what they're going to get.
And I'll just add here, Mark Christie had a good point about Untapped. Untapped drinkers are influencers, just like any review you receive. So you can reach out to them and deal with them. So that's a good point. Nancy wrote, on the model of brand trust at the start of the presentation, is the order that you address the various trusts on the cycle important?
That I think actually depends on what your business model is. So if I'm just going to quickly scroll back to that slide, bear with me. I think it's this one. No, this one. Yeah. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So these are the different types of trusts, and I think they all feed into one another, right? Because it really depends on where you are with your business model. If you are at the point where people are talking about you, you've got that word of mouth trust, you can build on the other ones. You can build on what that relationship trust with your current audiences, and then once people start coming to your tap room or start drinking your beer, they will tell others, and then that comes into the functional trust, to the brand trust, and then they learn about your values, and it's cyclical. So it really depends on where your business is.
Just something that was written here about influencers. A good rule of thumb is to work with your DMO's media relations team, so your own tourism organization, your own city, to help vet media and influencers, confirming they are on assignment and gather background to help put your best foot forward. So that's great advice. Oh, here's a loaded one for you. What do you see in the future for all of this?
In the future for all of this? That is a really open-ended question, so I'll try to be specific. I think in the end, you know, when COVID ends, I think things will eventually get back to a place where we can go and have in-person dining, really enjoy that kind of livelihood, like come back to events and in-person things. But before we even get there, we need to be able to start building. We can start doing these small things as like building blocks. So you can start building your online reputation, or if you haven't already, or you can start taking the 5 steps that I talked about and really build up um, the next phase of your business. And for the future, I mean, man, it's hard to say because I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did.
And then just one more comment here that I see, which looks good, is the our RE trust. Key is to not forget to tell your story, your values, as they tend to resonate the most with customers. Oh, and another question popped up. Do you think that all breweries should be enrolling in some form of diversity and inclusion training?
I know what the answer is to that, and my personal answer to that is yes. I think all breweries should be part of that, and it's not just breweries. I think all businesses should be part of that. It should be something that's talked about widely. It's something that should be top of mind for everyone. Diversity and inclusion is only part of it. I do think equity is another part of it as well. It's really interesting having talked to media about women in brewing and diversity and how this is such a timely topic right now. But if you are going to do that, my one tip to you is to not do it for lip service. Actually do it and live it and breathe it, because it will bite you if you don't.
That's good advice. Oh, and there's one more comment. There's a free webinar being offered by the Tourism HR Association, and Lesley can provide more info.
Yes, I can. Maybe after the seminar here, because I don't currently have it on me, but I'll make sure that Ryan gets it.
Okay, and it can get circulated on the new community page that we are all a part of now. Well, thank you very much, Lesley, for taking the time to talk to us. So let's virtually give it up for Lesley Chang from Beattie Tartan. And we are going to be back at 4 o'clock for how to use social media to make strategic decisions and grow your community. So we'll see everybody back at 4. Thanks, Lesley.